Hello, it's Jennie and Laurie with MoonLore, and today we are here to talk about the Aries new moon, which is exact on April 1st at 2:24 a.m. Eastern Time. And before we go any farther than that, I just want to introduce us. Jennie is from hiddenpathastrology.com. You can find her there. And you can find me at astrolore.org. And while you're here watching us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share and like and comment and all that good stuff so that more people will actually find our videos. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennie and let her give us a little information of just the phases of the moon and how that works.
All right.
All right.
So the Aries new moon is, it's sort of like the quintessential new moon because we're at the beginning of the zodiac. So the Aries, it kind of kicks off the zodiac, and there's a lot of symbolism that ties in with that. But before we get to that, let's just talk a little bit about the new moon. The new moon is the very beginning of a new cycle. And it's when sun and moon are together in the sky. And it's sort of similar to planting a seed in the ground. You have this new seed that's hasn't cracked open yet, and it's going to grow into something cool and big. And then a week later, we're going to have the, I guess you could call it the first quarter moon. It's when the sky, when the moon is in the sky, it looks like a half moon. It's like half light, half dark. Another week later, we'll have the full moon and the culmination, the middle part of the cycle, which is also, if you're talking about the plant cycles, that's when the flower opens up. So you're really seeing it at that phase. And then another week later in the moon cycle, we have the third quarter square, or the last quarter square. And then it comes all the way back around a week later to the next new moon. So the first half of the cycle, it's growing light, it's getting bigger, it's getting brighter, something's coming to some sort of closing. And then the second half of the cycle is more concerned about what you do with that structure that you built, or the home that you built, or it's when the fruit's being harvested. So that's kind of a couple different ways of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's interesting thinking just the simple fact of the first part of the cycle being the growth cycle and the second half of the cycle being the release of energy. And, just simple things like when you're thinking about doing things, do you want to do it when you're in a growth cycle or when it's in a shutting down cycle? When you want to transplant your plants or get your hair cut, or all kinds of things you can really relate in that really simple way. But the cycle, the sun and moon, the lunar cycle, it's the cycle of everything. It's just the cycle of birth, growth, full illumination, breakdown, death, and then starting up again. So, and like you said, the Aries new moon is the new moon of the new year, so to speak. So it's the new of the new.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, you can use these cycles for all kinds of little things, as Laurie's saying. One thing I do want to note is, like, our culture is pretty comfortable with growth. Like, we love this idea of growth and everything getting bigger. And, our culture is not as comfortable with how to end things and how to bring cycles to close. So I just always think that, because I can kind of feel that, like, it's really easy to be like, oh, it's all growth. And then, so it might take a little more effort and a little more consideration to think about how to close things down.
Right.
So anyway, just want to say that.
Okay.
Shall we bust out the chart, Laurie?
Yeah, let's just get that chart right out here and we'll take a look at it.
All right.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to notice here is, let's look for it. Where is that new moon? And it is got a little crowd around it, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not all alone, but there's the sun and the moon at 11 degrees of Aries. If you know your chart, look for Aries in your chart. That's where this is happening. After we're done talking about this, we will go into the individual impacts determined by your rising sign. But for now, just thinking about, okay, what's going on? We're planting a seed. We're planting an Aries seed. And so let's just, before we even think about those other pieces that are crowding in around the side. What is it we're planting with Aries? What is it, Jennie?
Probably the simplest way to think about Aries is it's the most active sign in the zodiac. It's the thing that it starts right now. There isn't a whole lot of thought that goes into the action. It really is the moment that you're doing the action. I like to think of it as kindling. When you light a fire, it's that first crackle of woof when you know that fire's going up. It's the ignition of a rocket blasting off the earth. It's that it's an initiation of ignition, like blasting off. So it's a very just potent, forceful sign. And it really is, it's like a screaming baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's what you like to say.
Yeah, I love to think of it that way. Aries it's the first sign. It is the cardinal fire sign. This is the birth of fire, that ignition, like you said, the spark that just goes up instantly. And one of the things with Aries is, that fast motion. There's not a lot of thought behind it. It's like something occurs, you take action. It is that screaming infant that demands what it wants now. Not when mom is ready to come take care of whatever needs taken care of. It is, I am going to open my mouth and scream as loud as I can until I get the attention I need. That's very much Aries.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you can imagine from what we're talking about, when that sign is out of balance and it's in the more sort of negative manifestation, it's going to be selfishness and kind of me first and screw everybody else. And I'm an individual. And I know we probably can't think of any examples like that in our society, but anyway, it can be that sort of me first thing. But in balance and in a more awakened Aries, now we're talking about the warrior or the pioneer who can really start something new and move something forwards in a way that no other sign can do in quite a succinct way. And it really deals with courage. It deals with this idea of fearlessness that we've had a little chat about. I mean, so it really is dealing with that. Let's take action. And the courage we're talking about is, well, even if there's fear, you're taking action anyway. And in fact, it's the action in the face of fear that really talks about the fully awakened Aries energy.
Yeah. One of the things I always think of with Aries, you've got the negative side, the selfishness, the me first, the, war, the out of balance warrior that's just going to, cause problems. The teenage kid squealing his tires down the road, that's an Aries idea. But if you're in, I always think of it this way, if you're in a dark alley and you hear footsteps coming up behind you, you want to hope you've got a strong Aries component in yourself, because that strength is not going to pause and slow down and contemplate what to do. It's like, take action, do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
There are a lot of instances in our lives where we want that strong kind of energy. You think about, you always hear those stories of whatever, something falls on a child and it weighs more than anyone could ever lift, but some, little old lady comes along and lifts it. And, that's Aries. You don't acknowledge in any part of you that there is something you cannot do. If you have to do it, you do it. That's Aries.
Yeah, because another one of the archetypes is also survival, the survivalist or the survivor, I should say. And that's another thing you can think about. I mean, Aries can also be a really powerful leader. It's just, you would just need to look at some other parts about it. Again, are we doing this in a powerful and positive way, or is this something much more destructive? So, I mean, the other thing I thought about with Aries, it's a fire sign and it's cardinal fire, and fire with no control is the wildfire. We talked about this a little bit when the sun moved into Aries. And it's fast and it's furious and it just obliterates whatever is in its path. So it does need some sort of channel or way or a cause to be aimed at, and then it can be extremely effective. So it's a very effective energy. And I mean, some of my most favorite people on the planet have Aries moons.
Yay.
So, yeah, for sure. So it's cool. And I think we should, well, What else
Well,
do you
let's talk about those other planets that are hooked up with it. What does that add to the picture? What we're looking at here, we've got the sun and moon, we've got Mercury right beside it. So that's the thought process, the voice, what's being spoken. So you can expect at this new moon, there's going to be a lot to be said.
Yeah.
And people may not think carefully and contemplate what they're saying. It
Mhm.
might just leak out. And then on this side, we've got Chiron.
Yeah.
What does that bring to the table?
Well, a Chiron is always that place in any horoscope that represents a wound, but it's usually a wound that you came into the earth plane with, but it's something that you're here to teach other people about. So it's kind of like this challenge, this
Hmm.
personal Herculean challenge that's laid before you that you must work within your life in order to be able to fulfill your purpose of teaching other people about that wound. So it's the wound you have to live through to help others with. And I think it's, I mean, right now with Chiron and Aries, I mean, this is a wound that has to do with, I got to just say it, the masculine out of balance energies that we're seeing. I'm not saying men, I'm saying the masculine, in other words, the impetus to go out in the world and do things is out of balance. There isn't enough reflective just consideration that's pairing with it. So I think having Chiron and Aries is a symbol of that in our culture. And I think that this new moon is yet another opportunity to recognize what that wound is and think about how that sits inside of you, your own balance with how much energy you put out. Do you have enough reflective energy? Are you taking enough time to think deeply about your actions? I think that there's some of that to this new moon. And it's just, I don't know.
I think
There's that.
there's something in here. When I look at that with the Mercury and the Chiron there, it's like, speak to the reality of what this is. You know, there's something that needs to be spoken about that wound. Yeah, the conversation needs to open.
Yeah.
And the conversation might open pretty hot and heavy.
Yeah.
And direct, and it might not be done with a whole lot of finesse. Aries has no finesse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it really, and what is that conversation? I think it is this conversation about courage and fearlessness. And what does that even mean? And, contained within the word fearlessness is an automatic nod to, well, what's the fear? What are we running from? What is the deeper fear that underlies this cultural wound? And that's what's being asked. What's the fear? And then what does it mean to face that? What does it mean to have courage? What does it mean to speak up to something that you see that doesn't sit well with you, that isn't okay, that is unjust, or it's that sort of thing to think about.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, with this particular new moon, that's it.
Yep.
There are not any direct aspects made to that new moon other than that Mercury and Chiron right there. So it's sort of like a separate stamp. So wherever this is showing up in your chart, it's like, where do you need to speak up about your woundedness? Where do you need to really develop or find that courage within yourself?
Yeah, and some of that I think is going to be, where are your fears? Because
Right.
where that fear is a signal to you about what you need to have courage about.
Yeah.
And fear is something that, I mean, you can feel it, it's palpable, it lives in your body, it's ancient, it's tied in with the more reptilian part of our brain long before we had prefrontal cortex.
Right. It's
So,
Mars ruling Aries.
yeah.
I mean, courage is just the flip side of fear. And wherever we have Aries is a place that we hold a lot of fear, and it's in facing that fear that we develop the courage. So that's, wherever this is falling in your own chart, it's really an excellent time with this particular new moon to really look at that. What is it? What's the fear in here?
Yeah.
How have I, up until this point in my life, worked to bring that place of fear into a place of courage? and what can I do now to plant a seed to grow more courage, grow more of the ability to look at that fear and flip it on its head to courage.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, that kind of summarizes this. I mean, the only thing I would want to add is just simply that Mars is the ruler of this glut of Aries, and Mars itself is in Aquarius, and it's applying to a conjunction with Saturn. And in the shortest possible way, that is a statement about that's a calm, cool Mars. And maybe it's not very happy because it wants to be hotter, but it's, you know, it's in Aquarius, which is the humanitarian sign, the sign of weighing out, really weighing consequences, unlike Aries, and really having to think about the bigger picture, having to think about social groups, affiliations, a much bigger picture of kind of cohabitating, and then applying to the conjunction with Saturn is just a statement of like it's having to slow down and deal with
and think about it. Yeah, it's Aquarius. It's like finding that innovation, the intellectual innovation to move that forward. And yeah, Mars is really having to slow down its process.
So it's actually a good time to confront.
So interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a nice time to think about that fear with a little more even-mindedness because awesome. You can. So it's a great opportunity, really.
That's awesome. All right. Well, is there more we want to talk to, or are we ready to jump right into the individual ones?
The only last thing to mention is the full moon is April 16th. So whatever you plant a seed for here is you've got the 2-month cycle. The 1-month cycle, April 16th, you'll see that full moon. And in the bigger year-long cycle, the full moon in Aries is October 9th. So if you're thinking in terms of 6 months, what you're going to see in 6 months from whatever you do with this, there you go. So
this is so exciting. I'm very excited about this particular new moon because on this new moon, I'm going to look for a new place to live. That's it. Okay, so why don't we open up? I think I've got something prepared so we can real easily see. If you know what your rising sign is, this will show us very simply. If you have Aries rising, this new moon, sun and moon, and Chiron and Mercury are all falling in your first house. So what's the fear and what is it to develop courage in the first house, which is really the self, how you express yourself? Yeah, that's interesting.
And also just, I think this brings to mind for me just the whole idea of that the first house is your sense of authenticity, which really means how connected you are to yourself. How well do you know yourself? So this is something about putting a stake in the ground for knowing yourself on a better level when you have Aries rising.
Yeah. Knowing yourself better, allowing others to see you're at your most authentic, showing that courage.
Yeah, and it might. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Laurie.
No, it's just interesting. I'm just thinking in terms of the fear piece. What that suggests, that maybe there is a fear of being fully expressed with Aries rising, the fear of being seen as too much, too loud, too fiery, too expressive. You can imagine that a lot of little children growing up with an Aries rising have probably been, particularly little girls in our culture with an Aries rising have probably been told an awful lot to slow down, be quiet, all of that kind of stuff. So there's that fear of showing that strength right there on that line. But this is, it's a time to plant a seed of speaking up for yourself and showing the strength and courage that you really have right there in your personality. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. The next one, if you have Taurus rising, this sun, moon, Mercury, and Chiron is all going to be falling in your 12th house.
Mhm.
And the 12th house is your unconscious. It's what's really kind of hidden behind the scenes in some manner.
Mhm.
Um, how are you going to think about that in terms of fear? What's the fear?
Yeah, I feel like almost maybe the fear of the of 12th house in the 12th house here might be I don't know, not being able to believe in anything bigger than yourself, like kind of getting stuck on like it's all about that there isn't a connection to a bigger picture. You know, I could see that. I think that the 12th house also
Or
deals with I don't know, something about taking a fearless action like for yourself in order to then turn around and selflessly serve the needs of others. I mean, there's this connection between you as an autonomous individual and then everybody else, like the collective, you know? So it's
uh-huh.
an interesting place to think of it.
It is an interesting place to think of it. I was thinking in terms of with Aries there in the 12th house, the fear of what you've hidden in the
Mm.
closet, the fear of, what unconscious things rule me that I haven't really addressed.
Yeah.
And this could be the time to plant a seed to really do some internal exploration, go hire a therapist or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think you're right though, because like I think when you have Aries tucked away in the 12th house, I definitely think there's a potential for frustration or anger to be hidden behind the scenes and not expressed, and that
Right.
you may be feeling that but unwilling to bring it to the light because it's kind of overwhelming. And as a Taurus rising person, you may see yourself as a peacekeeper, and it's not very comfortable to
Right.
dig into that fiery Aries stuff. But really, it's this need to excavate your own autonomy and to be
Right.
brave in that. And it's tricky.
Yeah. So planting a seed to find that hidden level of deep courage
Mhm.
because it is kind of hidden
Yeah,
away there. Huh.
I like how you
That's
put it.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Gemini rising. This is going to put the sun and moon in your 11th house. The 11th house is, I think of it as community. It's where we receive the love and support from community, from others.
Mhm.
Um, so the fear is probably around not being loved by your community, not fitting in. So taking an action, planting a seed to find a community or build a community that will really truly support you.
Mhm. Yeah. And I was thinking to add to that, that's a great scenario you just painted. But that for some people, I can even think of a couple people at Gemini Rising where they're being really called to stand up as a leader in their community right now. And
Ah,
it's kind of scary. It's like, ooh, am I a leader? Could I
right,
be a leader?
right.
Oh, and actually, and the answer is hell yeah. Like you're a person who you're being called to that position right now. So it's
Ah,
time to go ahead and accept that. And when you do that, just really trust that you're going to get the support from your cohorts that you need to do it. So there's kind of a little leap of faith as you take that brave step.
yeah,
So
and I think it's particularly because Mercury, which rules the Gemini rising, is in there too. So it kind of accentuates it even more.
yeah, really good point.
That's
Yep.
interesting. Okay, so now if you have Cancer rising, this is going to, did I skip
Like wait,
something?
skip one. That's okay.
Wait
No,
a
that's
minute.
okay.
Gemini.
It's in the well,
Oh, I just did it wrong. Huh, sorry about that. So this sun and moon, I'm going to fix us here. Watch me
what's the
create.
magic?
Watch magic happen right here. This is not where the sun and moon goes, for goodness sakes. It goes over here. So now we're going to write sun and moon. So if you've got
Ooh.
Cancer rising and the sun and moon, the new moon, oh, well, you know what we mean.
Yeah.
The sun and moon is in the 10th house, and the 10th house is career or your reputation. It's how you are seen by others in a more public manner.
Yeah.
So you're being asked to start something new, plant a seed for new growth in that area.
Yeah. So think about, with Cancer rising, what is intimidating to you in your career? What makes you feel nervous or anxious or a bit
Mm,
scared in your profession you have right now? What is the thing? And then think about what you might need to do to step that up. And I mean, for example, I mean, I have Cancer rising, so I definitely thinking about this is I'm needing to step up in my business a bit more self promotion to get my
mm,
business out there. Because if I don't do that, I'm not going to have a business for long, right? So it's this, I mean, that's the point, but it's kind of scary to be like, oh, self promotion, but it's what must happen, but it's for the
right,
bigger cause of the vocation, which can be
right.
your social reputation. So think about what makes you
Mm,
uncomfortable in your job, and think about where not your job, but your vocation, the
right.
whole thing, the profession, the career,
Yeah.
and think about where maybe you could plant a seed to be a little more assertive, or to take action on that thing you need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, really taking on the bravery or the courage to start a new path in that vocational area. That's great. Okay, so now we'll see in one moment if I did it right on the next frame or not. We're going to move now to Leo rising. What the heck? Oh, I see what that is. That's something totally different. I thought I had this all
Hey, no
right.
worries. um
There.
Looks perfect.
Look at that. There it is.
The ninth
Sun and
house.
moon is in the ninth house.
Hmm.
So the ninth house is about our worldview, is how I think of it. It's just the worldview. You can think of that ninth house in lots of different ways in terms of education or travel, but it's really, it's our, where we expand our understanding of the outer world.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, where's your courage there? Where can you plant a seed for developing a deeper level of courage, especially with Mercury there too? This is about speaking up about what your worldview is.
Yeah, so I think for here, identify what are the things that keep your mind a bit closed. That's the fear thing. Like, what is the thing that maybe makes you nervous when you think about how you could expand your mind to a greater space? Is there a certain part of your education you've avoided, or a certain class you don't want to take, or maybe it's public speaking. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. And think about, is there a class that you'd like to sign up for, or something where you take action on whatever it is that's limiting your mind. That's not allowing it to open as much as it
Right,
could right now. And that's your
right.
sort of your signal or your cue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes good sense. So, yeah, plant a seed for courage and speaking up about what you believe, how you view the world. That's a good one. Okay, so now we're going to move to Virgo rising.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And
Why is it not
Virgo.
moving? Oh, I know why it's not moving. Jeez. Supposed to go totally smoothly, and it almost does. There we go. So with Virgo rising, the sun, the new moon, the Aries new moon is going to fall in your eighth house. And I'm going to let you talk about this one. I'm going to be quiet because this is mine. So I want to hear what you're
Personal.
going to say.
Well, I mean, as ever with the eighth house, we talk a lot about the need to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And so this might be a place where it's been really tough for you to set boundaries. It's been really tough to advocate for yourself in maybe a difficult situation. It could be with anybody that you have a really contentious type of relationship with,
Hmm.
possibly, or someone that I mean, I was thinking about like somebody getting an inheritance and having to like, and suddenly finding themselves in a horrible fight with their family members, just as an example. It's a little bit off track, but anyway. So I think this is a really important time to think about your autonomy and how you want to establish that in the context of other people's really difficult stuff.
Right. Yeah. The eighth house being other people's values, other people's resources, other people's baggage. It's like speaking up to assert yourself as you navigate
Hmm. Yeah.
those boundaries. I just, I mean, I am looking at this from a very personal perspective here, and I'm thinking that what I'm doing is going and trying to find a place to live in the middle of this crazy world right now where housing is so hard to find. and really finding the courage to go after what I need in that, which is really going to be about navigating, other people's resources, because I'm going to be looking to rent someone else's space, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely feels very much very relevant. It feels very relevant, speaking up for what I need in the face of other people's stuff.
Yeah, well said.
So there's that. Okay, so that was Virgo rising. Now we're going to move on to Libra rising.
Right.
And the new moon, the Aries new moon, is going to be falling in the 7th house, which is basically our most direct one-on-one relationships. Romantic, well, not necessarily romantic, but partnerships, whether that be business partners or spousal type partner relationships. I think of, like therapy relationships are also 7th house. Any one-on-one important relationships are in there. So finding where there may be some fear to be super direct in those relationships, and planting a seed to speak up for yourself in those relationships.
It is really interesting, because if you have Libra rising, that sort of suggests that you're a person that part of your life direction is about harmony and unity. Yet you have Aries on the 7th house. So that means you're going to attract people in your life who maybe you're a bit fierce, who push you. Or it may be that you find yourself needing a lot of autonomy in your one-on-one relationships. And so this is a good time to kind of, as Laurie was saying, just check in with, where are you? Where do you fall in that spectrum? And what is the thing that sort of scares you? Are you more scared of being, too autonomous, or are you feeling a bit more into, like you're dependent, and like try to look at that and just find that balance, because that's really what you're being asked to do as a Libra rising person.
Yeah, it's really the balance. And this particular new moon is planting the seed on this side of the balance, which is your autonomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, so now if you've got Scorpio rising, this new moon is going to fall in your 6th house. So 6th house is day-to-day routines, how you take care of your health. What actions need to be taken, what needs to be begun around self-care.
Yeah, and this is when you're really being asked to honor your needs first with your health, like to put your health first with this. It's sort of a shot across the bow to remind you about that a little bit, especially because as a Scorpio rising person, you're also, you're already kind of a Mars oriented person, because Mars rules Scorpio and Aries. So I think it's extra important here to really just go, you know what, I've got to put my health first here. And maybe this might be a time to tune into what are those bad habits you have, or maybe even possibly addictive tendencies that you have, that you just need to look at, just need to kind of look at and reconsider.
Plant a seed, develop the courage to change your habits, your patterns that are not supporting your health, and planting a seed to begin the processes that will really support your health. That's a good one. Okay, so then in 2 weeks, the full moon will kind of give you a clue of how well you've done. So there you have it. Now with Sagittarius rising, this new moon is happening in the 5th house, which is really about your creativity, how you give of yourself. We can think of that 5th house as it's the house of children, creativity, love affairs, playfulness. This is a lot in here. Playfulness is in here. So where do you need to find courage in that area of your life? How's your creativity?
Actually, I think that's the creative pursuits here are really important, because you have a lot of creative energy here with Sagittarius rising. And sometimes it's really hard to set aside the time to do the creative pursuit. It might be the thing that gets really low down on your to-do list because you're trying to do all the things and have a job and have kids and do all the stuff. And this is like having the courage to set aside some time in order to put into whatever that pursuit might be. I mean, it could be something like, I need to make sure I play with my kids a bit more. I mean, it could be that. It doesn't just have to be a solo thing. And there's always a certain amount of risk involved with the fifth house. So there's always a bit of like, you're sticking your neck out a little bit to make sure it happens. So there's kind of fear inherent in it, right?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that part about playing with your kids, because the fifth house, because one of the things people talk about with the fifth house is children. And it can get a little confusing because the fifth house is not about all the drudgery of your children. It's about the part of your children where you see yourself reflected and where, you want to get down on the floor and play with them. So you plant a seed for more pleasure in your creative endeavors or in your relationships with children. Take a risk. Take a risk. Let the house go to hell and sit on the floor and play with your kids.
Or take your kid mountain biking or hiking or rock climbing or something like that. Like something really fun and engage in that playfulness where you can both be kids. It's
absolutely. And if you're young and watching this and want to have children, maybe now's the time to plant the seed to create new life. You can think of it that way as well. Okay, so next we're going to go to Capricorn. So if you've got Capricorn rising, this new moon is happening in the fourth house, which is the area of home and family. So what would we expect? What kind of seed are we planting here in the fourth house, Jennie?
Well, this is something about taking a fearless action to do with your family or your personal roots, like the very basis of your personality. So there is a sense of possibly establishing security here, but it also could be to do with your family. I was also thinking sometimes families bring up a lot of, well, always our stuff. So if you think about what is associated with fear to do with your family, just think about that. And then planting a seed for courage to take action in the face of that fear.
Right. And part of the action, of course, with Mercury there is speaking up.
Right.
And so with Chiron there, it might be an old wound that you have to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, this could be with your parents. This could be with, a conversation you have to have with the family as a whole. Or it could be also something where there's a family member that you really need to say something to them, like a more distant relative. So,
and it could also be just something about your home.
Yep.
Maybe you have to take action on, being courageous enough to put your house up for sale and move on, because it's family, but it also on another level can just be the home you live in.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's time to plant a seed that you want to move to a different part of the country or to another country. Yeah. So taking action on those, something in that area is important. Okay. So now if we have Aquarius rising, this is putting this courageous action that you need to start, the seed you need to plant in the third house, which is, communication. What do you need to say? What do you need to bring forth in your conversations? The third house also can have to do with your siblings, your neighbors.
It also can be your transportation. I mean, like it might be, taking the bus, driving a car, riding a bike. I mean, these are all things, the way you move about through your local area, the way you get to work. Those are things to also think about in that third house. But I also feel like
I like that.
Aquarius rising, you've got something to say because the direction of your life, you kind of have a future mindset, like you are thinking about bigger picture. And so you have some really good things to say about your vision of the future. So it's definitely time to speak to those things too. So it could be as minutia as, getting your bicycle fixed, and all the way to writing that book that
Yeah.
needs to come out of you and getting
Yep.
started and putting pen to paper,
Yep.
So,
Yep. Or speaking up to your siblings, or I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but it's somewhere in that area of communication or movement, close to home kind of movement. I think, if you're in a city, leave your car at home and go buy a bus pass. Just, taking those kind of little actions.
mhm.
Okay. So now if you have Pisces rising, this is happening in your second house. Where do you need to develop some courage around your resources, how you use your resources, how you build your own self-worth?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is I was also thinking about this one, like financial autonomy with Aries here. Like maybe this is a time to face some anxiety you have about your finances or your financial future, and to take that action. Maybe you need to meet with a financial counselor, or maybe you need to make sure that not all of your resources are tied up with other people. Maybe you need one account that's just for you, or one way in which you're working with that. I mean, it is a good time to think about that stuff too. Absolutely, the self-worth piece is very, very
Self-worth, money, resources, something in that area really needs you to bring your voice, your courageous voice to the table about those things.
Yeah, because ultimately with this setup, like you've got the power of the warrior in the way you offer resources to other people. So I mean, to yourself, but to others, you are a wealth of resource. So it's going to be worth it for you to face whatever your struggles are here, and take a courageous action.
Yeah, for some reason I'm thinking, if you feel like in any way your resources are being taken advantage of by others,
Mm.
this is a really important time to put that stake in the ground of your own autonomy and how it supports your self-worth,
Yeah.
how your finances support your self-worth.
Yeah, that's great, Lori. Because I also just think, I mean, so many of us do have self-worth issues, low self-esteem, and it's a problem. And a lot of people struggle with it. So, you're not alone if you're struggling with that. And also it's definitely worthwhile to take some time to address it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So now's the time. Get on it, everybody. Whatever it is you need to be planting a seed of courage around, this is the time to do it.
that's
We
right.
all need to develop more courage in our lives. Bottom line, all of us always, right?
Yes.
I would think so.
So,
Okay,
that's great. All right.
we're ready to wrap it up. We'll probably do another one in 2 weeks for the full moon.
Sounds good.
And thank you all. Be well.
Thank you.